One of the things I'm going to be doing this week is eating down the pantry and the fridge, decluttering the pantry and the fridge, if you will. I've got some ground beef here, and I actually purchased this for a video last week and then ended up not using it, so I need to use that tonight. I have like this much Parmesan cheese left in this container. I would love to use that. I also have all of these little Gouda cheeses, these little snack size cheeses. They've been in here for a little while, but I think I'm gonna shred these up and see if I can use it in whatever I end up making tonight. And when I was cleaning out my emergency meals bin and kind of restocking it, I had a package of gnocchi in there that was short dated, and I wanted to make sure that I got this into a recipe. So I'm gonna see what else I can scrounge up from around the kitchen to come up with maybe some kind of like ground beef gnocchi skillet meal here. I had to try a few times to find a decent onion to chop. There was a bad one in the bag. I didn't know it. It was at the bottom of the bag. And there were several others when I sliced them open were not good. But I finally found a good one. And I also have this red pepper that may be on the very last few days, but we're gonna give it a chop too. And looks like it's good on the inside, so hopefully I can toss that in this dish as well. I gave my onions and peppers a bit of a head start. I sauteed them for a few minutes on their own in a little bit of butter, and now I'm adding my ground beef. This is a pound, and I'm just gonna brown that up alongside the onions and peppers while they're getting tender. My ground beef is almost done cooking, so I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic. This is just the jarlic, if you will, as some people call it. And it just needs to saute with everything else for about 1 minute. Here's where it starts to get really random. I'm gonna throw in a packet of this Sazón seasoning, because I don't know, it just feels right. A little salt and pepper, a few tablespoons of tomato paste, oop, my gnocchi, and I have about a cup of this veggie broth left. I'm gonna toss that in there also. I'm gonna bring that to a simmer so that the gnocchi can cook. And before I do that though, I'm gonna add this block, or this part of a block, of this Greek cream cheese. This is cream cheese that has less fat and more protein, and I'm just putting it on top so that as the gnocchi cooks, the cream cheese will soften and it'll be really easy to stir in after the gnocchi's done cooking. Should probably take about 5 to 6 minutes after it comes to a simmer. My gnocchi is done. It looks and smells amazing. It cooked up beautifully. It probably doesn't even need this, but I already shredded those little cheese minis, those little miniature Gouda cheeses, so I'm gonna go ahead and stir those in as well. I found some romaine hearts in the fridge that needed to be used, so those have been soaking in water and vinegar, and I'm gonna chop those up and put them in the salad spinner so we can just make like really easy side salads for tonight. This is for a crock pot Parmesan chicken and orzo dish, and it just so happens that I have like half a box of orzo open in my pantry that I would like to use up. Into my crock pot, I have put half a pound of chicken breast, half an onion chopped, some butter, some seasonings, including Italian seasoning, salt, and pepper. And then I also added 2 cups of chicken broth, which I basically made from broth base. And I'm cooking that on high. And once that's done in about 3 to 4 hours or so, I will come back and add the orzo in, and I'll show you how we're finishing this up. Okay, my chicken is done. It has been cooking in here for about 3.5 hours. So now I'm just going to stir in 1.5 cups of orzo. Just gonna make sure that that's submerged, and I'm gonna pop the lid back on, and it's gonna take it about 30 more minutes or so for the pasta to cook. Okay, the pasta is done, as you can see here. I'm just stirring it. You got the chicken in there as well. What I'm gonna use is this here. It is a shredded cheese that is very similar to a Parmesan that came in my Perfect box, and it's about half used, so I'd like to go ahead and use that up. So that's what I'm gonna put in there today, and just stir that around, and then it's basically gonna be ready. I am working on some dinner for tonight, and on the stove I have some bacon, I have some diced onion behind me, and also a couple cloves of garlic that are ready to mince. So what I'm gonna do is give this bacon a head start, and then I'm gonna add the chopped onion, and then a few minutes later I'm gonna add the minced garlic, and I'm gonna let it all kind of sizzle and saute together. And then I'm going to add some tomatoes. I think I'm gonna add probably 1 big can, like a big 28-ounce can, or maybe 2 small cans. It depends on what I have in my pantry. So I think I'm just gonna use spaghetti seasoning if I have some already made up. And if you were wondering how I make spaghetti seasoning homemade, it's right here. But you could just use some Italian seasoning and salt and pepper if you wanted. If you want to throw in just basil, oregano, garlic powder, onion powder, if you wanted to just season this yourself. I think I have about half a brick of cream cheese left. I'm going to toss that in as well and just kind of let that simmer for a little bit. Then I'm gonna add about 4 cups of water, about 4.5 cups of water, and I'm gonna cook some pasta that I have left over. And what I have is about 10 ounces of whole wheat pasta and about 6 ounces of regular bow tie pasta. I'm gonna go ahead and give the whole wheat pasta a head start because it takes a little bit longer to cook than the regular pasta. I'm gonna add this, let it cook for 4 or 5 minutes, and then add this and let it cook for about 10 minutes more. And we should have some pasta for dinner. Okay, so here it is, and I just tried a bite of this and it turned out really, really good. The flavor is really fantastic. I was worried about how this would turn out using bacon instead of like a sausage or a ground meat or something, but it really is great. I just used, you know, the kind of stuff that I would normally have on hand. I might not normally have bacon on hand, but pasta and the tomatoes and just seasonings from my spice cabinet. Cream cheese is something we pretty much always have. This kind of pasta dish and just using whatever meat we might have hanging around, that might be a go-to meal for us in the future because this turned out really good. For dinner tonight, I'm working on a 1-pan meal that is utilizing actually ingredients from my capsule meal plan. This is kind of like a hamburger helper style meal, except I'm using sausage. I had 1/2 pound of ground mild Italian sausage. I'm finishing browning that up. To that, I am going to add 1 can of diced tomatoes. I'm gonna add some rice. I think I'm just gonna add 3/4 cup of rice, and I'll probably add the rice first and let that brown with the sausage here as it's finishing up. Then I'll add the tomatoes. I will add a cup of water, bring it to a simmer, let it simmer covered for about 10 minutes, turn the heat off. And then I'm gonna finish it up by adding just a splash of heavy cream and some shredded cheese. And then I'll figure out some veggies that we can have on the side. Okay, here it is. I just warmed up some plain old green beans from the can, salt and pepper, and have it along here with my sausage rice. This turned out so good. It's really good. So simple, but really flavorful. Definitely gonna jot the recipe down and add it to the capsule cooking ebook because it was really easy and it's very tasty. I would definitely make this again. For dinner tonight, I am going to use up the turkey meatballs that are in my freezer, along with the tortellini that I found in there, and this little container of cream cheese that is chive and onion cream cheese. I took the turkey meatballs out of the freezer and I let them sit on the counter for a little while to defrost just a little bit because I'm gonna chop them up into smaller pieces. I'm gonna toss those into my crock pot along with 2 cups of water and some chicken broth base and maybe a little Italian seasoning, salt and pepper, and also that container of chive and onion cream cheese. I like that it's flavored because it's gonna kind of help flavor the sauce. I'm gonna let that simmer in the crock pot for a couple of hours, and then I will add my tortellini to that and let that cook for about 30 minutes. And then we can top that with some shredded cheese and we should have a really yummy turkey tortellini. Okay, so this dinner turned out way better than even I could have imagined. I already tried a bite of it and this pasta is so flavorful, and this is something I would never have thought of to make if I was just buying stuff at the grocery store, like making a meal plan ahead of time and then buying stuff. So I'm so glad that I stumbled upon this because it was super easy and the kids gobbled it up. In fact, they had seconds, and now I am having mine and I tried some of it and it is so good and so easy. I am going to, I think, throw together some potato soup for tonight, and I have some really random stuff from my refrigerator that I'm gonna try to use to make it work. So let me turn you around and I'll show you what I'm putting in my crock pot. Okay, so as I stated, this is gonna be a little random, but I think I have found a way to use all these ingredients. So I just have some hash browns. I have a few bags of these in my freezer. I need to use them up. I'm not gonna use all this onion, maybe just about a third of it, 1/4 to a third of it chopped up, and then some cloves of garlic, salt and pepper, a little broth base, and I'll throw some water in there as well. I don't have a lot of meat, but I do have a few random things, and I thought these would add a lot of flavor. I have 1.5 of these little smoked sausage links, and I'm gonna chop them up really small and throw them into the soup. So I will throw all of that into the crock pot with about 4 cups of water and about a tablespoon or 2 of this broth-based seasoning and some salt and pepper. This is brie, I think it's brie, that is left over from Brick's charcuterie board that he requested for his birthday. And I think if I take the rind off of this, it will melt really well in the soup. So I think I have an idea for how I'm gonna make that happen at the end, and then add some milk as well. And I also decided to go with 2 cups of water and 2 cups of milk to start out cooking this in. I know sometimes people feel like you should really add the dairy at the end of the recipe, but I feel like with 2% milk, I'm gonna be okay here. And then I'll add the cheese at the end. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on high for about an hour and then turn it down to low. I had just a little bit of Colby Jack cheese left, so I shredded just a little bit up on top of my bowl, and then I have 2 pieces of toast. This turned out fabulous, so I'm very pleased with it. I've had these blueberries hanging out in my freezer for a few months now. They really needed to get used. So I saw an interesting recipe on Pinterest for something called a blueberry buckle, and I'd never heard of that. And it's basically kind of a dense sort of blueberry cake with like a crumb topping. It was pretty basic, like pantry staple ingredients, you know, flour, sugar, milk. I did use a little bit of half and half watered down for the milk because we're starting to run low on milk and I didn't want to like use all that up, but it turned out fantastic. It is so good. I actually sent some with my daughter in her school lunch. She was packing lunch this morning, so she took a piece with her. My husband took some to work because he's having lunch with some friends. McKenna's back here behind me eating it up. And Brick is just coming downstairs to have his. I will leave that recipe linked in the description box below. If you've got some blueberries and you have just regular baking staples, you can make this. It was absolutely delicious. In addition to caring deeply about trying to limit our food waste, I also do this because it's a way to save money on our grocery bill. We're not letting anything go to waste that we've already purchased, which would be a waste of that money that's already spent. And I'm also delaying going to the grocery store by a few days, which usually means that I'm spending less money across the year on groceries. This is what is left of my chicken breast. I think there's 2 little chicken breasts in there, so I'm going to throw those in there with some corn. These Southern style O'Brien hash browns. The great thing about this kind of hash browns is that the onions and the peppers are already in there, so it helps season whatever you are using. I have an open package of cream cheese here, so I'm going to use it, and it's probably about 2/3 of the package or so, maybe 3/4 of the package. And I am out of broth base, so I'm actually going to try seasoning it with this. My sister sent this home with me, so I'm going to put maybe a tablespoon of that in there and just some salt and pepper, 3 or 4 cups of water. I'm going to cook it on high, come back and shred the chicken up, and then I still have some half and half I'm trying to use up, so I might put just a splash of that in there, and we'll just see where we are. I'm just throwing this together and hoping that it comes out yummy. We'll see. You guys, this soup turned out fantastic. What a happy accident. I ended up not putting any half and half in it because it was plenty creamy with just the 1/3 glass fat cream cheese that I used. I even made up a little white rice to throw in mine to kind of stretch it a little bit so we would have leftovers for lunch tomorrow. And I added just a little bit of salt and pepper to my bowl. And I did have just a little bit of my cheese left. I have this much of my block of cheese left, so I shredded a little bit of it to put in there as well. But this is so, so good. I love it whenever I accidentally stumble upon a really delicious soup recipe. Yay. I'm actually putting this little pantry cooking compilation together while my family and I are working on eating things up from our kitchen. And I'm reminded that about a year ago, I put out a new pantry cooking ebook that features some of the recipes that you're seeing here and lots of other ideas. And since this video is coming out in July, which is my birthday month, and since I'm turning 42, I'm gonna put that pantry cooking ebook on sale. When you use the code HBD42 in the month of July, you can get 42% off. I will leave that linked in the description box below. Again, HBD42, 42% off my pantry cooking ebook. Go get it. That I really wanted to use up. It's been in there for a few months, so I need to use it. And I thought I would try to make some lunches for myself with that. I also had a bunch of open packages of various starches in my pantry that I wanted to try to use up. I just had 1 serving of these grits, so I made them according to the package directions, and then I added just some salt and pepper and 1 of those wedges of the Laughing Cow cheese from my fridge. I put some of my pulled pork from the freezer into like a frying pan. Then I sauteed these bell peppers, which really needed to be used today because they were already sliced, in the fat that the pork had rendered. And so it kind of seasons the whole dish, just having this pulled pork with it. And then I can use the rest of this pulled pork to try to create just some other really simple lunches, probably with, you know, some noodles or some rice, just whatever I can come up with to try to use this up, along with other stuff in my pantry, fridge, and freezer. So I have 3 kind of overripe bananas here, and I don't have any eggs. So I can't do banana muffins or banana bread or banana pancakes like I would normally do, at least not the way that I make them. And I thought about like a no-bake energy bite. So I'm just gonna start with my 2 ripe bananas, and I'm gonna give those a little mash here. And I'm gonna add to that a 1/2 cup of peanut butter, but I'm gonna use my scale to measure it out so that I don't have to dirty up one of my measuring cups with peanut butter. I need 128 grams of peanut butter. So I'm gonna put that in here with the banana. I'm gonna stir that in. Now I'm gonna add 2 cups of quick cooking oats. And I'm also gonna add 1/2 cup of these sweetened coconut flakes. They've been in my pantry with the baking items for a little while, so I'm gonna use some of those. You could leave this out if you're not a coconut fan. My kids kind of like it. And I also have about 1/3 of a bag of chocolate chips, so I thought I'd throw those in there too. Just give that a stir. After I get this stirred up, I'm just gonna roll them into balls, and then I'll put them into the fridge or maybe even the freezer and let them set, and then I can just keep them in an airtight container in the fridge, and the kids can eat them throughout the week. And this coupled with the box mix that I have should make some good snacks for everybody for the week. I have an open package of these Southern style chicken bites. I got these in the freezer section at Walmart, but these are not cooked, they're raw. So you have to make sure that you cook them according to the package directions and to the temperature that it recommends. So I'm going to put some of these in the air fryer, and I'm gonna turn them into little sliders, I think, because I have some of these sweet Hawaiian rolls. I also have some of these brioche hot dog buns that I thought about using too. So one of these 2 things I'll probably use up to make these. And I'm gonna make like a little honey butter sauce type thing to sort of toss the chicken nuggets in. And my inspiration for this are those chicken minis from Chick-fil-A. You know what I'm talking about? They're on the breakfast menu. We'll see how it turns out. I just have a couple tablespoons of butter there in my little mug, and then about a tablespoon or so of brown sugar. And I'm just gonna eyeball it, probably use maybe a little bit more than a tablespoon, a hefty tablespoon we'll call it, of honey. I'm gonna pop this into the microwave and stir it all together once the butter has melted, and then I'm just gonna toss the chicken whenever it comes out of the air fryer and it's done cooking with this little honey butter glaze, and then I'll be ready to turn it into sandwiches. My husband used to eat these flavored oatmeal packets for breakfast almost every single morning. He hasn't done that as much lately, so these have been sitting in my pantry for a while, and I wanted to figure out a way to use them up, and a quick Pinterest perusal showed me several different ways that you can make cookies from them, so that's what I am doing here. I have 6 packets of flavored oatmeal. I'm using the maple and brown sugar, 1 stick of butter, 1 egg, a 1/4 cup of white sugar, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 1 cup of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk. This cookie recipe starts out the way a lot of cookie recipes start out, and that is by creaming the butter and the sugar. But what you didn't see me do, because for some reason I lost that clip, is add the egg and the 2 tablespoons of milk that I used. So that's in there as well at this point. And then I'm adding my 6 packets of oatmeal and my flour, and I'm going to stir that until it is combined. I did this mostly by hand. I think it kind of makes a mess whenever you try to use the blender whenever you're working with flour, and it really wasn't that hard to mix up. So then I dropped this onto a cookie sheet, which I had lined with parchment. My oven has been preheating at 350 degrees, and I used my mid-sized cookie scoop. It's probably about a 1/4 cup of dough per cookie, and I baked these at 350 until they were done, which for me was about 12 minutes. And these made delicious cookies. It made about 1.5 dozen cookies. I stored them in an airtight container, but they did not last long. The kids ate them. My husband liked them. I liked them. I will definitely be making these again. Plus, I'm already thinking about all the different flavors I can make depending on the kinds of oatmeal packets that I use. We have these little steaks that have been in our freezer for a while. They were gifted to us around Christmas time. So they've been in there for about 3 months, and I feel like steaks don't last forever in the freezer. So I really need to get them out and cook them. And we only have 3. 2 of them are like little fillets, but that's okay because not everybody's home tonight. So it's gonna make for a really nice, meal that I can throw together quickly. I think I'm just gonna cook them on the stove. And I'm gonna do some really easy pasta in the Instant Pot, I think, so I can get that done fast because it's already like 6:30. I have about 1/2 jar of pesto in my fridge. I used the other half for a different recipe a while back, and I need to use this. And in perusing Pinterest, I found this recipe for a creamy pesto pasta. And I also have half this bag of spaghetti, so about 8 ounces of spaghetti. And then it calls for a little bit of cream cheese and cottage cheese and like a little bit of shredded mozzarella. And so I thought, you know what? I can use up quite a few of these items making that. And I'm going to attempt to do this in the Instant Pot. I also have this head of butter lettuce, and I had it in my mind that I was going to make some kind of wraps with this, but the clock is ticking and I just don't think that's gonna happen. So I'm just gonna use this to make some salads tonight. I'll peruse my fridge and my pantry, see what I can come up with to throw together a really easy salad, maybe make up a vinaigrette. I have my pesto sauce in the Instant Pot here, and I'm gonna add 2.5 cups of water. And I wanna stir that up, make sure that that is all mixed together. I'm also gonna add a little bit of this Auntie Nono's everything seasoning, just a little bit. And now I'm putting in my spaghetti noodles, which I broke in half just so that they would all fit in the Instant Pot. And I'm gonna kind of smash those down and make sure that they are all submerged in the liquids here. I feel like this needs just about a 1/4 cup more of water. I just wanna make sure that the spaghetti isn't really sticking out there. Okay, now I'm gonna pop the lid on and seal it. And I am going to set this to pressure cook for 4 minutes. That's all I'm gonna do. It will take a few minutes to come up to pressure, and then it will cook for 4 minutes, and then I will let it natural release for about 10 minutes before we add the rest of the ingredients. My steaks are finishing up on the stove, and we also have the washing machine going in the background, so hopefully you can hear me. I just finished letting my pot natural release for 10 minutes, and then I flipped it to manual release to let the rest of the pressure out. And now I am adding in about 2 ounces of cream cheese, 1/2 cup of cottage cheese, and about 1/2 cup of shredded mozzarella. I'm going to just stir to combine that. And then I'm going to pop the lid back on top and just let the lid sit on top so it can trap the steam and the heat and kind of help the cheese to melt into the pasta. I have a couple of packages of tortillas that are open that I like to use up. And I also have some meat that my husband brought home from a staff lunch. I also thought it would be really nice to have some potatoes because I think I really want to do these breakfast burritos that are like a grilled breakfast burrito. But I didn't have any potatoes and I didn't have any hash browns. But what I did have hanging out in my pantry was a box of these, boxed potatoes. What I did was just make these up according to the package directions for the microwave. They've been sitting kind of cooling down on the counter. And I think I'm going to try to incorporate these into these breakfast burritos, these grilled breakfast burritos that I'm making from all of this hodgepodge stuff in my kitchen. So we'll see how it turns out. To make the filling for the burritos, I heated up some of the leftover meat in a skillet. I wanted it to render some of the fat from the meat so that I could cook the eggs in that. I whisked about 5 eggs or so, and then I put that into the pan with the meat, and I just stirred it around until the eggs were scrambled and cooked through. To assemble the burritos, I started by putting some of the cheesy potatoes onto the tortilla, and then I topped that with a little bit of the meat and egg mixture. I thought about using some shredded cheese here. I decided against it because I felt like the potatoes were already cheese flavored, so I didn't need the extra cheese in there. Some fresh tomatoes I think would have been really good with these as well. So I just rolled those up pretty tightly. I was able to make 5 of them with the ingredients that I had on hand. I popped them onto the griddle and sprayed them with a little bit of nonstick cooking spray so that when I flipped them, they would crisp up really nicely, and these were absolutely delicious. And I'm so glad that I popped these onto the griddle because I really think crisping up that tortilla made these even better. In this bag are the containers from just a few of the items that we were able to use up by not going to the grocery store this week and focusing on using up what we already have. So this isn't even everything. This is just the stuff that, made sense to save and wouldn't smell up my kitchen by holding onto it. But these are all empty packages that are going in the recycle bin, but just things that we were able to use up in making meals and snacks and stuff this week, and just kind of using up open packages of things. We were able to use all this stuff up and delay going to the grocery store. I've just been in the kitchen trying to figure out what to throw together for dinner. I have some chicken that is thawed out, and in perusing my fridge, this is a total YouTuber prob, y'all. It's just like YouTuber life. I have 2 different containers of sour cream that are partially used. Like, they're both from recently because I've used them in different videos, and sometimes because of the way I do my videos where I might do a grocery haul and then make meals from those items, I just end up with multiples of the same item. So that is what has happened here. So I perused Pinterest and I found a recipe that I had pinned a while back that looked really good called sour cream chicken, and I'll show you how I'm making it. And it actually is going to work out fantastic because I also have the end of an open bag of rice and the end of an open bag of egg noodles, and I think this dish will work really well over the top of one of those. And then I'll just see if I have like maybe some frozen green beans or something so we can have a little veggie on the side. Let's get it going. For the sour cream chicken, I have 3 large chicken breasts that I have cut up into chunks. They're not like little nugget size, they're just like chunks. I'm going to use half of this onion. I also have 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'll use 2 tablespoons of olive oil, some minced garlic, my sour cream. I need a cup, and that's about what is in these 2 containers combined, plus 3 tablespoons of flour, 1 cup of water. The original recipe calls for red peppers. I don't have any, so I'm going to use this can of fire roasted tomatoes. I think that's gonna work really well. And then I'm gonna use a teaspoon each of this Auntie Nono's everything seasoning and paprika, salt and pepper to taste. In my pot here, I have my chicken breast chunks browning in the butter and olive oil, and I went ahead and just threw in the diced onion and the minced garlic with that. I know a lot of recipes want you to brown the chicken and then take it out and then brown the onions and the garlic, but it's all going back in the pot along with the chicken broth and the seasonings to cook for another half hour, so I'm just gonna skip that step and kind of saute everything together. Now I'm adding a teaspoon of Auntie Nono's. You could just use salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, a teaspoon of paprika, my can of fire roasted diced tomatoes, and 1 cup of water. I'm just gonna stir that up and make sure that it's combined. And I'm gonna bring that to a simmer and cover it and let it simmer covered for about 20 to 25 minutes until the chicken is done cooking. I am taking the super duper easy road tonight, and I'm gonna use my Instant Pot Aura, but I'm gonna use the rice setting to cook the rice and noodles that I had in the pantry, the open packages. So I had about 1.5 cups of rice, and then I added about 3.5 cups of water, and I just put the noodles on top, and I'm just gonna cook them all together. I mean, I know that that might seem odd to have noodles and rice all mixed together. It'll be fine, it'll work. And I'm gonna put this on the rice setting, and I don't even know how much time it takes. It might even be on a sensor, but it doesn't take very long at all for it to cook the rice. I've used it to cook rice before. I've never tried it cooking the noodles with it, so we'll see how it turns out. My chicken is almost done cooking, and I'm just mixing together the sour cream and the flour because we're going to add this to the sauce once the chicken is done cooking. My chicken is done. I took it out of the pot and set it aside on a plate. I'm going to add my sour cream and flour mixture and whisk that together here with the sauce in the pot really, really well. And then I'll put the chicken back in and let it all simmer together until it thickens up, and it will be ready to serve. This worked like a charm. It turned out so great. So my noodles and my rice are done, and no, I do not care that they're mixed up together. I'm just going to plate this up and I'll show you what it looks like. I cannot wait to try this. I did sample the sauce and it's so good. I'm super excited to try this all together. I didn't have any fresh veggies or any frozen veggies, but I did have canned green beans. I just threw those on the stove with a little bit of butter and some Auntie Nono seasoning. You could do salt and pepper. I am ready to dive into this. This is me coming back on here to say that this is absolutely delicious. I feel like it never fails. Every time we do a pantry cooking video, we always discover another recipe that we really like. This is fantastic. Another thing that I try to keep in mind whenever I'm doing some pantry cooking or trying to use stuff up from my kitchen is that not every plate at every meal has to look exactly the same. Sometimes I have little odds and ends of items remaining, and it might not be enough for my entire family to have a serving of that thing, but if I have 2 or 3 packages that are like that of various and sundry items, I can actually just prepare them all and everybody can still be fed, but their plate might not look exactly the same as somebody else's. For instance, I made a roast in the Instant Pot, and for those of you who watch my Instant Pot videos, you will be happy to know that I took your advice. I cooked the roast longer in the Instant Pot and it came out perfect. It was nice and tender, and I shredded that up as soon as we got home from a swim meet and it was ready for us. But to go along with that, I didn't really have enough of any one starch, but I had some little packages of things from my Green Chef boxes like couscous and rice, and just a couple of other little items, a few ears of corn, and I had some lettuce for salads. So what I did was just prepare each little thing, and then everybody could make the plate that they wanted. If they wanted to create kind of like a power bowl with like a grain and then with the roast and, you know, some veggies. If they wanted to create a salad with that. My kids actually made some nachos with that, with a little bit of cheese and some of the meat on top. So even though we didn't all have exactly the same thing, everybody was fed, and there were lots of different options, and I managed to use up the ends of little packages of things so that they aren't hanging out in my pantry anymore. I have a graham cracker crust in the pantry, and also I have a container of Cool Whip in the refrigerator. This is actually a dessert that my mom used to make a lot in the summertime, and it was a favorite of ours. It is very simple. I think it just has 5 or 6 ingredients, really easy to throw together. I am using 3 ounces of cream cheese, which is perfect because that's exactly how much I had left of this block of cream cheese that was already open in the refrigerator. So we're gonna use that up. And I am also using half a cup of peanut butter, 1 cup of powdered sugar, and then a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm gonna use my hand mixer to beat those all together, and then I will fold in 8 ounces of Cool Whip. Okay, I wondered why this wasn't coming together for like a creamy batter the way I remember it, but it's been a while since I made it. So I went back and checked my mom's recipe, and it does call for 1/3 of a cup of milk as well. So now that I'm adding this in, the batter should come to the consistency that I need it to be before I fold in the Cool Whip. Once that is mixed together, I'm going to pour it into a graham cracker crust. I am just using a store-bought graham cracker pie crust. You can make one from scratch if you want, but the crust isn't really the star of the show with this pie. It is the nice, cool, refreshing peanut butter filling. Okay, it's been a while since I have made this pie, like maybe a couple of years, and I forgot how good this is. I mean, it tastes kind of like an ice cream pie, but it's not quite as rich. You know, it's a little bit fluffier. So good, so easy. If you're a peanut butter fan, definitely try this. My husband, God bless him, is going to brave the heat and fire up the grill for us tonight. So he's gonna grill up these 2 steaks. We don't do anything special with our steaks. My husband usually just uses salt to season them, and he wraps them in a little bit of plastic wrap and puts them in the fridge for just about 30 minutes or so before he is ready to cook them. And then since we are firing up the grill, I'm just gonna do some foil packets for sides. I have some potatoes here. I'm gonna slice those up, and I have some zucchini here, and I'm going to put those in 2 separate foil packets because the potatoes take longer to cook. And I'm just gonna put a couple of pats of butter in there, maybe some Auntie-No-No seasoning, sprinkle a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top, and that's going to be sides to go along with the steak. I've had some brown rice in my little rice jar for a while that I wanna use up, and I measured it out. It was almost exactly 1.5 cups. So I have that here in my Instant Pot or a slow cooker right now because there's a rice cooker setting on it that I'm going to use. And to this, I'm going to add 2 little containers of salsa that are from takeout over the weekend because why not? And I'm also going to add 3 ounces of cream cheese and then about 4.5 cups of water because my water to brown rice ratio is usually 3:1. So I'm gonna pop the lid on that, and then I'm going to put it on the high rice setting until the rice is done cooking. I also have some chicken drumsticks left over from a crock pot meal I made a few nights ago. You will have seen that in my summer crock pot video. And I'm going to just debone these. I'm just gonna take the meat off the bone, and then when the rice is done cooking, I'm going to stir in the chicken that I took off the bone into the rice mixture. And I'm hoping that that is going to make some really good filling for tacos because I have several packages of open tortillas to use also. And when I restocked my produce today, I thought that I did not have any tomatoes, so I bought a few tomatoes at the store. But when I got home, there were actually 3 or 4 Roma tomatoes already in here. So I chopped those up and also chopped up some red onion, some jalapeno, and then added some lime juice and some salt to make some homemade pico to go along with this meal also. This turned out pretty fantastic if I do say so myself. I added a little bit of fresh lettuce and some queso fresco that I had in the refrigerator. I actually bought that for another recipe and ended up not using it, so this will be a good use for it. I've got my homemade pico and then just some chips and some grapes on the side, and that will be dinner tonight. As I was looking through my chest freezer, I found a bag of frozen chicken breasts. A few chicken pieces were still in it, and I know that I purchased that within the last few months. So I'm gonna combine that with some just random pantry ingredients to create a soup tonight, and this is sort of a combination of probably 3 or 4 different chicken tacos slash enchilada soups. So in my crock pot, I have 2 chicken breasts. I'm gonna add a can of hominy, a can of shoe peg corn. This is actually corn that's been sweetened and it's little bitty. These are 2 ingredients that are in my dad's taco soup. A can of beans. I'm gonna use navy beans because I like them. 1 can of Rotel and 1 can of salsa verde that I've had in my pantry for a few months. I think I bought that for another recipe and ended up not using it. I'm also gonna toss in a package of this fajita seasoning mix from Thrive Market to season it, and I'm going to set a little bit of cream cheese on top. I have some of a block of cream cheese left that I need to use up. I'm gonna let that cook until the chicken is done, and then we'll take the chicken out and shred it up and see where we're at. I decided to finish this up that I was gonna stir in just a little bit of half and half, probably about half a cup or so, just to give it a little bit more richness, nice creamy chicken taco slash enchilada slash fajita soup. I'm not even sure what to call it. I'm just gonna let that heat through and then we'll be ready to serve it up. I have already tried this and it turned out fantastic. We were actually out of tortilla chips. I cannot believe it. We almost always have tortilla chips, but I did have this little bag of tortilla strips. This was actually in my emergency meals bucket that I cleaned out recently. I've been using some of the things up and then I restocked it. You will have seen that video, but I just put some of those on top and some shredded cheese. It's ready to go. It's ready to eat. It turned out fantastic. What I have here is about half a pound of ground pork. And this actually came from a meal kit, but occasionally I know that I'm not gonna get to make that particular meal just because of our schedule, but I will save the components from it. Like maybe I will freeze the meats and I will put the seasonings and the starches in the pantry. Maybe I will use the produce so that nothing goes to waste. It doesn't happen very often, but occasionally it happens where I just can't get that meal made for my husband and myself. And I'm going to add some diced onion. I'm gonna press a few cloves of garlic as well. I'm gonna add a little olive oil in here. And I'm gonna season this with a little Auntie Nono's seasoning. Auntie Nono's everything seasoning. Garlic powder, onion powder, salt and pepper would do in place. I'm also gonna add a little Italian seasoning, probably about half a teaspoon worth or so. And a pinch of red pepper flake. So essentially what I'm doing is turning this into kind of like an Italian style sausage. Like an Italian sausage that you would use to make a meat sauce, which is what I'm gonna do tonight because I also have a package of frozen ravioli that I would like to use with this as well. So I'm just gonna brown this up until the onions and the garlic are browned and the meat is cooked through. In perusing my fridge, I also found 1 little zucchini that I chopped up into tiny pieces. So now that my meat is cooked, I'm gonna go ahead and brown that along with the meat and the onions and garlic. Just kind of let that saute together for a couple of minutes. I also found in the fridge about half a jar of pasta sauce. I was using this to make some easy lunches for myself this week, so I want to go ahead and use up the rest of that. And I'm going to add 1 can of diced tomatoes. I'm stirring in about 1.5 cups of water as well, and I went ahead and added about 2 teaspoons of better than bouillon since I'm using just plain water. If you wanted to use chicken broth or something instead, you could do that. And now I'm going to add my ravioli. This is a 25-ounce bag of frozen ravioli. I want these to cook right in the sauce, and it's going to take just a minute for it to come up to a simmer because these are still cold. I've had them sitting out on the counter for about half an hour, so they've thawed just a little bit. It's gonna take just a minute for this to heat back up. But once it comes to a simmer, I'm gonna cover it. I'm gonna let it simmer until the raviolis are done. Should take only about 5 to 7 minutes. And then I am going to probably sprinkle some kind of cheese on. I don't know what kind of cheese I have in the refrigerator. I better go and find out. I was able to procure a wedge of Parmesan cheese from my refrigerator. The only other cheese that I have right now, besides sliced cheese for sandwiches, is Monterey Jack. And I didn't think that that was really the flavor profile that I'm going for here. So we're gonna go with some of this. I will admit that I put just a little bit too much water in this, so it's a little bit more like lasagna soup. But that's okay. It only matters how it tastes, right? Okay, so some more random odds and ends hanging out in my pantry. This bag of sweet and salty trail mix, a few pretzels. I still have just a little bit of that cereal left. I found this recipe on a website called 2 Peas in Their Pod for a marshmallow popcorn. So I actually just air pop about 8 to 10 cups of popcorn in my handy dandy Hot Pop silicone popper. So I'm just going to dump the rest of my cereal, this mix here, and then this handful of pretzels, and that gives me my little mixture that I'm going to toss with a coating that I'm going to make on the stove using 1 stick of butter, 1 cup of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, and then the original recipe calls for 12 big marshmallows, but I'm just gonna use the rest of this jar of marshmallow cream that I have left over from a lunches video where I made peanut butter and marshmallow cream sandwiches for my kids. I'm going to dump this into this brown paper sack, and then I'm gonna pour the sauce or the coating over the top and then shake it up really, really well. That's how I make Muddy Buddies or puppy chow. Now, I know it might seem overwhelming to think about this type of exercise, using things up in your kitchen if you've never done it before. But my advice would be just to take baby steps. If you know that you've got enough food on hand to feed your family, maybe just start by coming up with meals for one day, delay that trip to the grocery store by one day. You'll be surprised how much easier it gets as you make this a regular part of your kitchen routine. Like maybe once every month or once every couple of months, you challenge yourself to do this sort of exercise and use things up. For our Christmas dinner this year, I actually ordered a turkey from a local business. It was a smoked turkey, and before we left to visit family after the holiday, I put it into the freezer. So we're back now, and I pulled this out to defrost, and I've decided that I'm going to attempt some kind of casserole with it. And I think since this is a smoked turkey, I'm gonna kind of take it almost like a Southwest style turkey tetrazzini, because I have an open package of linguine I want to use up. I have several open packages of cheese. I don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to find out. I cooked my linguine noodles on the stove to al dente and drained them, and now I'm making a roux from 3 tablespoons of butter and 3 tablespoons of flour. I just want to mix that together over low heat until it gets kind of pasty. And then to that, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of milk, and I'm using whole milk. And I'm going to season that with some salt and pepper and some elote seasoning from Trader Joe's, just because, I don't know, it feels right. I'm gonna stir that around until it starts to thicken. And then I'm also going to add 1 can of fire roasted tomatoes. Again, I don't know why, it just seems right. And the rest of my 2 little packages of cheese that I have, one of them is a Mexican blend and one of them is just a sharp cheddar. Then I'm going to stir in my turkey. I defrosted that and I cut it up into little bitty pieces so it's in nice little bite-sized chunks. Just incorporate that into the sauce. And then I will pour that into a casserole dish with the noodles, and I will just bake it at 350 for about 25 minutes until it is all heated through, and we'll see how it turns out. I have to say, this did turn out very well. I am pleased. I mean, you know, it's like pasta and turkey and tomatoes and cream sauce and cheese, so how could I go wrong? But still, you just never know. I didn't know if those flavors would work or not, but they did. Instead of going all out on a big, huge New Year's Eve dinner, I actually just got all of the leftovers out that have accrued over the holidays. Mainly snacky things like chips and queso and cheese and crackers and some veggies and dip and some of the jalapeno chicken sliders that I made at my in-laws. I brought some of the leftovers back with me because it made a lot. And that is a practice that can help a lot whenever we are trying to use stuff up, is to have a leftovers night. And I do this occasionally. I just get everything out of the fridge. It's sort of an everything must go night. I put it out on the counter. Sometimes I supplement with some veggies or with a green salad, or maybe I whip up some rice if we want to make rice bowls with the leftover meat or something like that. But we will just have everything laid out and everybody can make their plates and make a really great, delicious meal, and we can use up that food that we have. Well, I don't have a roast on hand, but I do have another fryer chicken. So I think I'm gonna do like old-fashioned or more old-fashioned chicken and noodles. So I am chopping up some carrots and some onions to get into the crock pot along with the whole chicken, and I'll just season it with paprika, salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. I also have about half, well, maybe a third of this 5-pound bag of potatoes. It's maybe 2 pounds of potatoes here in the pantry that I need to use up. So I'm gonna peel and chop these, boil them, and I'm gonna make just really simple mashed potatoes, like a little bit of butter, milk, salt, and pepper. That's gonna be it, because the gravy is gonna be the star of the show. My chicken is done. I removed it from the crock pot, and I also made sure that I removed any leftover bones or big chunks of onions from what's left here, which is about 2 cups or so of beautiful, delicious broth that chicken rendered. And I went ahead and left the carrots in here as well. And now I'm gonna add about 2 cups of these egg noodles to the broth mixture that is here in the slow cooker. And I'm just gonna pop the lid back on, and let those keep cooking on high. It should take about 15 or 20 minutes or so for the egg noodles to cook in the broth. When I want to jazz up frozen green beans, I will cook them either on the stove or in this case in the microwave. And when they're done cooking, I will toss them with a little bit of butter, like maybe just a tablespoon, and then about a tablespoon each of Parmesan cheese and breadcrumbs, a little salt and pepper. So good. My kids gobble those up every single time. When the noodles were done cooking, I made a cornstarch slurry with half and half, about 3/4 of a cup or so of half and half, and a couple tablespoons of cornstarch. I shook that up in a jar and then poured it into the crock pot with the noodles. And I've had the lid on for about 10 minutes and they are ready to go. So let me show you how we're gonna plate this all up. I just take some mashed potatoes just like this. I know it sounds crazy, but this is the way that my Nana would serve this. You just take the gravy and the noodles and you put it right on top of the mashed potatoes just like that, noodles and all. Have some chicken to go along with that. Finish up with some green beans, and oh my goodness, this looks and smells amazing. One of the really cool things about pantry cooking is that sometimes making one meal begets another meal, which leads to another meal. That's actually what's happening tonight, because I still have some chicken left over from the chicken that we roasted, and also some carrots from that meal. Plus I have a few handfuls of Deini pasta in the pantry that I want to use up, and I have some half and half in the fridge that is short dated, and I'd like to go ahead and use that as well. So a quick Pinterest search showed me this really delicious looking Deini chicken soup recipe. It's from Eat Well. I'll leave it linked in the description box below. I have 3 medium carrots that I peeled and chopped, and about half of an onion chopped, and it's been sauteing in a few tablespoons of olive oil for about 5 minutes now. I'm gonna add a little bit of minced garlic, my leftover chicken, and I'm gonna stir that and let it saute for just another couple of minutes. Now I am adding half a block of cream cheese, which is another thing I needed to use up from the refrigerator, and at least a quart or 4 cups of chicken broth. And this is broth that I made from the bones of the chicken that we cooked the other night. I'm gonna bring this to a simmer, cover it, and let it simmer for about 10 minutes or so before we add our pasta. Oh, also some salt and pepper just to taste. Time to give this a stir and then add the pasta. The original recipe calls for 2 cups. And I know I don't have quite that much left in this box, but I have some little rotinis left here in the bottom of this glass jar. And I'm just gonna bring this to a simmer and let the pasta cook, and then we'll finish it up. Okay, this looks and smells amazing. And we're gonna finish it off by adding the half and half. It also calls for cheddar cheese, but honestly, I don't even think it needs that. I'll just grate up the cheese and kind of leave it out for people to garnish their bowls if they want. But I'm just going to stir this and let it heat back through, and then it is ready to serve. I am eating a bowl of the leftover soup for lunch today, and I just have to say that it was fantastic. This is so worth making, really good, super easy with pantry ingredients. Does anybody else out there ever have just random snacky items that your family just won't finish up? We brought this bag of Bugles home from New Mexico, and that was 4 weeks ago. Nobody has opened it, nobody is choosing it. So I thought I would combine this with a few other things in my pantry to make some snack mix. I have some peanuts here, a couple handfuls. I don't want to use all of these crackers because I just got them and my kids actually will take these in their lunch, but I'll add a few handfuls of these, and just to kind of bulk it up with a little more snackiness, I'm gonna air pop a few cups of popcorn, and then we're gonna make like something to top all of this with and bake it up in the oven. I have my oven preheating to 250, and I combined all of my dry ingredients into a roasting pan. I like to sift the ingredients just to get all the little crumbs out, because those would soak up all of the sauce. And now to season this, I am melting in this saucepan 1 stick of butter. I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of Worcestershire, a la the Chex Mix recipe. And I'm gonna keep this really easy and just season it with this packet of Fiesta dip mix from Hidden Valley. But you could season it with like an all-purpose seasoning, or with a regular ranch mix, or just with, you know, garlic powder, onion powder, salt and pepper. Once this sauce is all mixed up, I'm gonna pour it over the top of my dry ingredients and give them a toss, and then I will put them in the oven, and I'm gonna let them roast for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. I'm just gonna check on them and stir it every 15 minutes or so until it is done, and then lay it out on some parchment paper to cool off. Nobody was eating the Bugles, so I decided to doctor them up a little bit.
It's good.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Good, like football snack, you know, just like munch on it while we're watching football this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, Who doesn't like snack mix, right? Can I get a little bit of cheese to go with it?
I have had this bag of Rhodes rolls in my chest freezer in the garage for way too long. I'm gonna do a couple of different things with them though. Did you know that you can bake Rhodes rolls into bread if you just put them in a bread pan and let them rise all together? So I'm gonna do that because I actually want a couple of loaves of just plain bread that I can slice and make toast out of. And the rest of them I think I'm gonna turn into clover leaf rolls. I'm gonna divide each roll in half and then dip those roll pieces in butter and put 3 of them in each section of a muffin tin and bake them up. My husband plans to grill some steaks tomorrow night, so we can have those along with the steaks and the sides. And I think that's how I'm gonna use up these Rhodes rolls that have been in my freezer for a little while.